It's been busy around here at RWR the last few days. We'd like to thank all of our new subscribers and everyone who left comments on our previous video, Load Development Methodologies. We are humbled and thankful for your responses. Again, thank you all. It seems we've stepped into the deep end of the pool just a little bit, and we're not afraid to do it. In fact, we welcome the opportunity. Right off the bat, we'd like to acknowledge that we tend to use the Hornady Podcast folks' names pretty fast and loose, playfully referring to them as the Statisticians Guild or the Ballisticians Guild, and we do so with the utmost respect. Seth Swergick, Jaden Quinlan, Miles Neville, and their guest, Jeff Seward, and from Applied Ballistics, Brian Litzt, they all have our respects. Respect for what they accomplish daily before we even grab our car keys in the morning. They make possible every aspect of our hobby, and they constantly refine their products, push the limits of knowledge, and give those benefits to us for pennies. We owe them a debt of gratitude. But they also confuse the hell out of us sometimes. That's because we aren't in the guild.
How they smell is important.
And that's why we started Real World Reloading, to pass on what we've learned from those who came before us to those who will outlive us, to bridge the gap between the guild members and those of us in the real world. We're not new to the gun sphere on social media, but we're new to proffering our own take on things publicly, i.e., we've been watching other gun tubers for quite some time, so we are familiar with the information and arguments out there. And we know our place in the scheme of things. We're not all that. We do know quite a lot about reloading and firearms in general. We've lived through enough years, and with guns in that lifespan, to have amassed a unique view on many topics. Topics that seem to crop up often in the comments. Topics where confusion is the norm rather than understanding. It's in this capacity where we feel our perspective can be most beneficial to the new or newer reloader. Advanced reloaders have already built a belief system that works for them, and typically aren't offended when that belief system is challenged. Rather, they are excited to learn a new detail that fits into or alters their system in a meaningful and positive way. Advanced reloaders have become comfortable taking on the full responsibility of the entire system, from barrel and action choice to component choice, the entire system. And they owned that system to a very high level of granularity, surprisingly small detail stuff. But not everyone had a great teacher. Not that I'm one, but my father sure was. And not everyone has had the time needed to experience every little thing about guns on their own. We all have to learn from others' experiences and integrate that into our own belief system, constantly. It's our goal to engage genuinely with everyone who comments and answer questions to the best of our knowledge and ability. But when discussing complex topics with such a wide range of people, like in this video, it can sometimes be difficult to get the concepts across cleanly. One such topic that has come up repeatedly is that of ESSD, group size, sample size, statistics, and so forth, the how do you do what you do conversation. The Hornady Podcast guys have said small sample size is not statistically significant, and they're right, from their perspective, that of the statistician or engineer. Absolutely true. The world they work in is built on large data groups because they must know the finest details and be able to filter out noise and random interactions from their tests. I've heard the Hornady guys say they blow out barrels daily. They go through a ton of barrels. During testing, they think in terms of thousands of shots, whereas we in the quote real world think in terms of my shoulder starts hurting about 30 rounds into it. So their world only intersects with our world when the product they produce drops into our shopping cart. Until their bullets are on our loading bench, their world doesn't even apply to ours. Their questions and tests are fundamentally different from ours. Their results are expressed in graphs, bode plots, Gantt charts. Whereas our results are expressed as, I have to move out to 200 yards so I have a target big enough to see between the shots. So let's just get this out of the way right now. Bullet manufacturers, Hornady, because of their podcast, do amazing work producing some of the most consistent projectiles ever in the history of firearms. How they do that is magic. They turn copper, lead, antimony, tin, and aluminum into bullets that withstand humongous pressures, buck wind in a way that's almost like a guided missile, and they do it for $1 a bullet or less. Be astounded right now at what they accomplish every day. But they don't know anything about our rifles, our particular rifle, or our particular target, range, distance. They have to account for the most fundamental elements so that we can take over and apply those fundamentals to our particular use and situation. They didn't rise from the dead and pay for our sins. They made bullets. So when they say small sample size is not statistically significant, they mean, from their perspective, small tests have no value. We, on the other hand, have nothing else to go on. The engineers and ballisticians do the high group size testing for us, so we don't have to. We pick it up from there, and we work on far more subtle things, stuff only our rifle will tell us, stuff the ballisticians and Statisticians Guild members can't know, because they're not here at our bench shooting our rifle. Think of it from the perspective of randomness and stacked tolerances for just a moment, starting with a barrel and an action. If we buy an action, say it's a Defiance build, and pair that with a Bartline barrel, we've got 2 of the 30 or more items needed to shoot a rifle, and already we have tolerance stacking and random selection working against us. We could assemble that rifle, shoot it with magic ammunition, get the target, and then change the barrel to a sequential serial number barrel, repeat the test with the same magic ammunition, and we would get completely different targets. Many people would conclude, incorrectly, that this example tells us one barrel is better than the other. But the truth is more complex. The combination of parts, including both barrels, produce different results in a random distribution of effects, in random patterns that vary from group to group. Yeah, that's untidy, and that's how life is. It's never black and white. It's always nuanced and often difficult to understand. Welcome to being human, and welcome to statistics-induced headaches. So let's talk about statistics for a bit and try to build a deeper working man's knowledge of what is generally only spoken of by engineers and the Statisticians Guild members. The number 5.
5!
Statistically speaking, at least way back in antiquity when I took stats at college, our confidence in our data set begins to become something to talk about at the number 5. Below that number, there is no statistical analysis to be done because there's simply not enough data points to work with. We can still find value in 3 or 5, but only as inferences. We infer the results rather than quantify them. That's the beginning. Just the beginning. It's hard to get absolute perfection in numbers with a group of 5, but it's a start. The number 7.
7!
Statistically speaking, a group of 7 data points is way better than a group of 5. 2 more data is better. Seriously, it's almost half again better. And the number 10.
10!
Now we're talking statistics. With 10 data points, our confidence in our statistical evaluation being accurate is starting to become significant. The number 30. Generally, a number of 30 is considered as a reasonable starting point for many statistical tests. But that being said, your desired level of precision affects how many data points are needed. Also, more complex studies with more variable results often require larger sample sizes. Trying to detect small differences or variations requires much larger sample sizes. The number 100. A sample size of 100 is well within the statistically conversational realm, depending on the system being discussed. See what just happened? We started speaking more precisely about our data, and the conversation reflects that change. We must use our words carefully and correctly now. Being imprecise with our words will change both how our tests are performed and how we interpret the data from those tests. We're doing science now. What we're describing here takes the graphic form of a decreasing curve, which illustrates the change in confidence due to an increase in sample population. That's a decreasing rate of returns. We need to choose our sample population to fit our test and the required level of confidence in those results. More is not always better. We're looking for the right sample size. In the Hornady Podcast, episode 162, entitled uncomfortable, and maybe mind-altering ballistic realities. They talk about the number of 30 as being the sweet spot for the number of samples taken. And that sweet spot of 30 didn't just show up happenstance. It's a good way to know, at 30, that your ability to predict the modeled behavior from shot to shot is true and accurate of that particular load. That's where that 30 rounds comes in handy. They do the heavy lifting for us. We can take their 30-round groups, the statistically valid results that they've found, and apply that to our smaller group applications. And put that another way, they've already found in their load charts what's safe, what's accurate, and what's likely going to turn out decent results. What we're trying to do is a much more subtle thing. We're trying to figure out, of everything that they've decided is safe, accurate, and possible, which one works best for our bullet barrel combination. So how do we choose the right sample size for us? We have to start with the goal. The foundation of your research is a clearly defined goal. You need to determine what you're trying to understand or discover, and use your goal to guide your methods, including choosing your sample size. If your aim is to get a broad overview of a topic, let's say 3 or more powder types, a larger or more diverse sample series may be appropriate. However, if your goal is to explore a niche aspect of your subject, such as what's the right powder charge of H4350, a smaller, more targeted sample might serve you better. You should always align your sample size with the objectives of your research. And remember that you can't predict everything. Unpredictability is built into all aspects of our world, the real world. It's overarchingly present in all aspects of the universe. Random happens. A larger sample size can help mitigate some of the risks of unpredictability, but we need to keep in mind our constraints. We can't all perform shot tests with 1,000 rounds. So plan for a sample that meets your needs and considers your real-life constraints. Consider your budget, timeline, and the nature of the sample itself. Be realistic about what you can achieve with your available resources. Always tailor your sample size to fit your constraints, not the other way around. And there's another important drive home here that people in all professions often forget. The results of any test, whether lab work performed by a doctor or charge ladders performed by a reloader, need to be actionable to be worthwhile.
That's pretty good.
We need to ask ourselves the following when designing any test. Do the anticipated test results have the potential to change our plan of action? And do the details of those results clarify that plan rather than confuse it? If the answer to these questions is no, then the test is just academic. We want our test to address the realities of our particular use case. No statistician knows our platform and intended use better than us. So as with reloading practices, choose a testing methodology that works for you and your platform, with your budgetary and time constraints in mind. We ascribe to as reasonable an approach as possible for our needs and limitations. Small sizes for gross reality checks and initial load development. Larger sample sizes for fine-tuning and confirmation of our previous choices. And constant collection of data from each outing for even larger data sets, followed by re-evaluation and possible revamping of our chosen load. Combine all of this with the real-world realization that on any given day out on the range, the wind is going to give us more headaches than the statistical validity of our tests ever could. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video. We hope that today we've broadened the conversation about stats and sample sizes, added clarity, and brought focus to why we do load development the way we do it, particularly in light of the certainty that there are essentially no alternative approaches. And we hope that our respect for all of your comments and our interactions with each of you, which is central to our purpose here, is clearly evident in today's video. Our humble thanks to you all.